Okay, I just wanted to make a video to let you all know that I've had some very interesting walk videos. And I'm going to let you all listen to some of my walk videos from starting about 4 days ago, because the drunken peasants contacted me and wanted me to go online with them. And I said I was really busy because I had to prepare for an apartment inspection. And tomorrow I have a dental appointment. But I have pretty much figured out how to make Jesus happy in writing the Gail series. Yeah, basically what I have written thus far, especially any stories from 2002 forward, has been sloppy first draft. Yeah, I figured that out. I'm what you call a brainstorming writer. Before I actually get down to the actual writing, Buddha told me not to use any writing instruction books. He said just write. I think he realized he just needed for me to get the sloppy first draft out so that I could work out these stories kind of like in my mind. He would say, "Oh my God, we've got to put up with your sloppy first draft." Jesus gave me a formidable writing assignment, all right? I mean, it was his idea. I just wanted to leave a transcript of all of his conversations, that he had with us before he left, and he stopped me. He didn't like it. He wanted me to stop. I understand now why, okay? I get him. I pretty much have him, God, and Satan all figured out. And I know why he wants the Gail series. And I have actually summarized it very well in 3 walk videos that I made. And I'm going to supply a link to them underneath this video. But yeah, so what I'm going to be doing, here's my plan. I do my best writing when I write the stories sequential. It's less confusing that way. I did that with my novel Silver Skies, and which, by the way, actually won some Oscars when it was made into a movie. So that just goes to prove, yeah, that's how Matthew McConaughey fell in love with me, because they made a movie out of Silver Skies that I wrote in the 1990s. And Steven Spielberg was the producer. I think he's actually working on the Gail series. He might have been one of them who... You might say, well, I'm not sure about this, but I think part of the problem, part of the reason that that I thought I was finished, what was actually sloppy first draft, is because of my high intelligence. And Brent has the same problem, okay? We've got really high intelligence. And we forget that most people do not have an IQ of 10,000. You say, is that your IQ? Yes, that is our IQ. So at least, it might even, I don't know. I feel like I'm getting things more, so I might be even going higher than that, I don't know. But the point is, when your intelligence is that high, okay, it can be difficult to communicate some of the stuff you grasp well on paper, or in a way that people that have less intelligence than you can get it. And I think what I've been doing is I've been reading the stories, and because I understand the story, even though I've been jumping all over the place, I'm assuming that my reader will, and that is absolutely incorrect. You might say, well, you've been jumping all over the place. Yeah, I think part of the problem is it's kind of like what happened to Jesus when he was with Coco the gorilla. Coco the gorilla said, I want to try to understand calculus. And Jesus said, oh, you're going to regret this, Coco. But he decided to, her brain ended up exploding. We had an incident with Jesus where Brent was going to try to understand some higher things from Jesus, okay? And Brent's brain almost exploded, and then Jesus said, I'm going to have to stop. See, this is the problem. You might, you might say, you think that's part of the problem? Yes, I think that's part of the problem. Brent and I are too smart, right? So we can fail to realize how our writing or our communications are coming across to the reader. So I thought of a way to solve this problem. I'm just going to go back and put more structure into my writing. More structure into the writing. So going back to some of the stuff that my Institute of Children's Literature writing teacher taught me. Way back when I studied with him back in 1991 to 1993. His name was Jim Murphy. He was a good writer, a children's writer. And yeah, even though I'm not going to be following him exactly, but so it's in my head, you know. I wrote Jesus the Eternal Bridegroom in first person point of view. And that was one of my best-selling books, by the way. The public loved it. And what I'm doing right now is taking chapters out of that book and putting it into short story form, because basically it's about different adventures between me and my men. So what I'm going to be doing right now, I think the stories that I wrote from 1989 to 2002 are good. Yeah, I didn't hear about any problems. I mean, I think one of them, we were able to fix it. It seems like the ones that we're having some issues with are the more recent ones. When I started writing out of order, you say, what do you think made you decide to do that? I'm not sure. I'm not a very patient person, you know. So I think I just wanted to get it out. And I felt like I was doing it like as a duty for Jesus. Like, let's get this over with and make Jesus happy. Now that I understand why he wants me to write it, I'm understanding better how important this is to him, and I'm taking a different approach to writing the Gail series. Yeah. I don't regret the sloppy first draft, because as a result of doing that, I figured out it was kind of like doing a character sketch. Yeah. A character sketch of all the main characters in the stories that I'll be writing. Yeah. It was like, those of you that are writers, you're going to know what I'm talking about. So it was like doing a really deep character sketch on myself, Brent, Satan, God, Jesus, the whole shebang. Yeah. Which means that now that I'm getting down into, so basically I was doing a character sketch and gathering my research. Now, when I go into the actual writing of the story, my characterizations will probably be really good. What I mean by that is I will be able to, I actually did a reading of something from Jesus the Eternal Bridegroom. I will be able to go really deep into, so here's my goal right now. I'm going to take a lot of the similar approach to what I had writing Silver Skies. This way it won't be, and people won't get confused by telling the stories in order. Actually, Buddha kind of suggested I should do them in order, but he didn't say I couldn't do them out of order, but I don't think he meant for me to do them as out of order as I did. The reason why it's important for me to do these in order is because right now, sloppy first draft, it's okay to do it out of order, especially when you're trying to find who the characters are and stuff. But is because each story kind of builds upon the last one. We learned and grew through each experience we went through. So the next story usually builds upon, well, the last story. Kind of like cause and effect, you know? And then that way it all makes sense, too. So I know what my theme is now. Okay, that's really important, that I know my theme. I think I had to do the sloppy first draft just to figure out what my theme should be. My theme is righteous, free love. Okay, now that I know that, and I believe that's why Jesus wants me to write the Gail series, to showcase righteous, free love in action. That would best be done through Brent Spiner's point of view, next my point of view, and then the point of view of some of our men in some of the stories. So I wrote Jesus the Eternal Bridegroom in first person, and I think I'm going to stick with that because I know my husband very well. And I'm going to enjoy showing him off. Satan has said a lot of lies about him and about me and about the nature of our relationship. And the best way to dispute those lies is not to argue with Satan, not to defend myself, just use like a show don't tell. Now when I say show don't tell, what I'm going to do is tell the stories using dialogue, scene. I'm going to have to use some transcript because that was my main way of communicating with my men. And also a lot of what I call interior monologue. Yeah. Because my husband is an incredibly deep and vast person. And in order to get him, I'm going to have to do like I did with Jesus, the Eternal Bridegroom, go deep into his heart and soul. And I'm usually good at using metaphor and simile to do that. Yeah. Yeah, I could even read you some portions. But this is actually part of, let me see, Jesus, the Eternal Bridegroom. Here we go. Yeah. I actually read from this a long time ago. I actually wrote this in, I think it was 2013. And I'm actually taking parts of this and making them into short stories. So this is actually part of the Gail series now. What I'm planning on doing is making the Gail series from 2011 forward, all this book. See, I left off in this book when Jesus showed up in 2012 to rescue us from Satan. Okay, so I'm going to take up from there. Yeah, let me see if I can give you a feel for the voice in this book here. When Terence came back from the dead, I realized that Jesus Christ became my ally. After the rape at the Quebec trial, Lori made me feel forever imprisoned as her slave. My penis belonged not to me, but to the homosexuals at the homosexual compound. My survival after the Nukaki seemed a dream. My chances for happiness with Gail drowned in Jesuit bukkake. Now a glimmer of hope entered my heart, and for the first time I began to believe that Jesus would make it possible for me to marry Gail. My public charades no longer seemed more real than my dreams of Gail. I believed that someday I could be in public what I was in private. Somehow, some way, someday, Jesus would reconcile my heart with my fame. This is how I wrote this, okay? I believe this is how he really feels. Here's another section. When your celebrity life does not fuse with your soul, You feel like a disembodied spirit, like you have betrayed yourself. Two dogs in sight fight, and neither lets the other win. If fame wins at the price of your soul, then you die. When everything is sacrificed for fame, we drink ourselves to death or drug ourselves to death to fill up the emptiness, mourning the loss. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. That's the interior monologue. See how this is how it works, and this can still be show don't tell, simply because I learned this from writing Silver Skies. Okay, scene are what they call beats in screenwriting, okay? That's action, okay? That's things happening, okay? But here's how this is how you write fiction, but I can kind of apply this to writing narrative nonfiction, which is what I did really well with this. This is my own artwork, by the way. And according to Jesus, or to my men, I drew Jesus pretty accurately. Yeah. According to, so basically, fiction, the way I wrote Silver Skies, is scene and sequel. What that means is you have an action scene, okay? One of the cardinal rules of writing, for fiction anyway, and Jesus did tell me to throw out the writing instruction books, but I need to remember them a little bit because of all the criticisms I've been getting. I can tell I need to pay a little bit more attention to structure. So I am going to pay a little bit of attention to structure. You open up a scene with the main conflict, okay? One of the cardinal rules of writing, no conflict, your writing's a bore, okay? And I'm oversimplifying what I learned in writing, but that's part of the problem, okay? Another thing is, once you open up the scene with the main conflict, you need to stick to that conflict. It's kind of like sticking to your theme. So, so my theme is to portray righteous, free love, and I believe that's the theme that Jesus wants me to have. So, for instance, the next story that I'm going to write, continuing Jesus the Eternal Bridegroom for the Gail Series, will be when Zach Knight seduced me. I have to outline to make sure I stick to my theme and that the story is structured so I don't confuse people. The theme for that one, and I'm actually going to go into Brent Spiner's point of view. You see, when Zach seduced me as Antichrist, and I've never heard the end of this, everybody was accusing me of saying, oh, you really wanted Jesus as a lover over your husband. You're on a power trip. That's why you were so eager to make brain-to-brain loving with Jesus. That's not quite true. Actually, it's not true at all. And I think Brent knew that. He's always known that about me. You say, why were you accused of that? I think there was a lot of projection on the part of Zach Knight and Satan, okay? Yeah. Anyways, what I'm going to do with that scene, I think the best way to disprove the lies from Satan and Zach Knight, when Zach Knight was the Antichrist, is I'm not going to waste my time, and I need to stop the labels. That's another thing I need to stop. So what I'm going to do as I write is I'm just going to show who I am by going into how I thought and felt, or I'm going to let Brent do it for me. I know him so well. I could almost, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up that story. Brent's penis was actually shrinking. We had just met Jesus for the first time in a conversation where we were talking with him face to face. And right after Jesus left, Brent's penis started shrinking. So I'm going to open up with that. That's the conflict. Why is this happening? Why are we being punished just because Jesus started talking to us? Okay? Brent's penis started shrinking. I, in the meanwhile, was getting brain-to-brain communications. And up to this point, my brain-to-brain had been pretty reliable. And I was hearing from somebody who claimed to be Jesus in my brain-to-brain. And they seemed to want to make love to me. I was flabbergasted, but I thought, okay. So now what I'm going to do instead, I may change the way I'm going to write this story, but that will be right now I just finished the story about the Canadian Nukaki and how Terrance Jenkins died and basically he got resurrected from the dead. He died, went to heaven, and came back with the cure to the AIDS virus. So that's how I end that story. Then the next story, this is from Jesus, the Eternal Bridegroom. Then the next story after that will be Matthew McConaughey battling Camilla Alves in court. I was thinking, in Jesus, the Eternal Bridegroom, I had a whole chapter devoted to when my men bought me a dildo. And I ended it that I hardly ever used it. I don't think that's a very important story. What I'm going to do with that one, you may say, why not? Because it didn't really change me that much. The stories that are important are the ones that changed me, okay, that caused me to grow, or that caused my men to grow. That one didn't really. It wasn't a growth story. So basically, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to decide on whether a story should be included is whether it's a story that resulted in some sort of growth. Okay? That's how I'll decide what needs to be in there. It doesn't necessarily need to be my growth. It could be the growth of one of my men, or maybe an important person that we dealt with. Like I'm planning on including stories about Bubba the Black Jesuit when I get around to him. I actually included him, sort of, because I wrote the story about the homosexual compound when he was bad, okay? And believe me, he was really bad back then. So yeah, growth stories is what I'm going to include. Okay, now that I know it's going to be growth stories, what I will do with that is then I'll research the material and say, okay, how did you grow as a result of this experience? These are questions I'm going to ask myself as a writer. How did you grow, or how did the characters, I'll say characters, that's, these are real life people, how did they change or grow as a result of this experience? Okay, once I figure that out, how and why this happened, that will be the focus of the story. You say, wasn't that the focus of... No. Basically, what you all have been getting has been sloppy first draft, just brainstorming, trying to figure out who the character, kind of like a combo character sketch, brainstorming. Now I'm ready to get down to business. Okay, when I figure out, so once I figure out what was the main conflict, and I'm also going to structure them as to what either character or event stories. Character stories, I think, is going to be the strong emphasis, but some of the stories are more about a disorder that needs to be corrected. Yeah, so that's going to be focus 2. But if the story is a big character story, then I'm going to go deep into interior monologue, deep into the thoughts, what we were thinking on a very deep level. And this is where all that brainstorming I did is going to come in handy. On a very, very deep level. So, for instance, the story about being seduced by the Antichrist, I actually got pregnant too. And I didn't realize that I was in menopause, perimenopause, And how did that affect me? How did that affect Brent? That will be the focus of the story. Jesus ended up aborting all the babies. Yeah. That, I think, is an important story. I was going to kind of fluff it over. I didn't think it was too important. It's important. Because it really does showcase righteous free love. Yeah. You might say, what happened to Brent's penis? When I get into the story, I think Jesus actually healed his penis. I'm going to be going deep, exploring how this affected Brent. You know, how it made him think about body parts, his penis. Yeah, I'm going to have to almost dig into my subconscious. And then me, part of the growth that I had to deal with was changing conceptions about Jesus, about Brent, about myself, identity flexes and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, the focus is going to be on growth stories. I will open up with a conflict. In this case, it'll be Brent's penis shrinking and how it's affecting him. He actually took it very well. But the Jesuits were trying to freak us out. But both Brent and I were strong. I actually took the seduction by the Antichrist as a very strong person. And I will be showcasing that. You might say, why are you bringing it up? Because it showcases. You say, why were you so strong? Because of the power of the love between Brent and myself. You may say, how did you grow as a result of that experience? I learned that I needed to go more with my guts. I was actually uncomfortable with making love to Jesus. And I think Brent sensed that too. Yeah. I was scared to be myself, even with Jesus. So I'll be exploring that. That's something that I never really got really comfortable with being myself, I think, till starting about 2021. But I was, what I'm going to do is just, like, show how I grew. Basically, I realized as a result of that I needed to quit being so eager to please, that I needed to be more true to myself. So, yeah, I will be going into that. Anyways, I have figured out all sorts of things. Yeah. Sometimes I can't figure it out till I actually get into the writing. Let me see what else I can read you some more from this. So basically this is going to be like the way it is. Let me see. Yeah. You say, well, basically, I have thought a lot about God, Jesus, Satan. Jesus seems to have a need for a different kind of a Bible right now. I don't think he's so concerned about divine inspiration as he is that people have a good example and that people can learn how important it is to honor true love in free love. Yeah, anyways, I have some pretty profound insights in, and I'll supply the links to those underneath this video. But yeah, I'm going to be going in order, okay? Basically continuing Jesus the eternal bridegroom until the present time. Yeah. And then I'm going to go back and write the stories from 2002 to 2012. It's going to take me a couple of years. This is what Jesus needs. Let me see if I can give you another example, because a lot of this stuff's going to be in After Laurie raped me, I drifted with lost hopes and heard wails of terror in the night. Then Gail reached out to me, grasped my hand, and lifted me from quicksand while I drowned. Would a tidal wave of semen snuff out my existence? The powerful blast, this is talking about the Nukaki that hit Canada. The powerful blast ejaculated through the streets so fast there was no time to react. Before they could scream, innocent civilians drowned in the milky depths. Doctors and nurses rounded up the celebrities first. They flooded into the rooms to gather everyone down into the basement. Dreams became screams in the night. The nations fumed. Earth's swamp teemed with crocodiles, devouring the vast and the good. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is kind of like going into deep interior monologue. I gazed upon my friend Terence, who loved Gail as I did, and risked his life for her. How vast was Terence when he shot dead that head Jesuit juror who tried to annihilate Gail. How I longed for a universe shimmering on the horizon like an emerald sea, with the diamonds in my heart flowing towards Gail. My heart floated towards her so that my body, a ghost, flowed with vastness and peace. My vastness trembled with Gail over raging falls. The torrents below roared in defiance. Waters roared, and Jesus' hand stilled our nest and kissed it. And Gail and I fell asleep in each other's arms. If true love was a fantasy, then let that fantasy be my only reality. But love and vastness did indeed embrace my heart. This was no fantasy. Okay, this is how he's reacting. See, this is where a writer becomes an artist. When you write a story, you have an action scene. Then you have the sequel or the reaction. That's the part of the reaction. Yeah. That's pretty much what was missing in the transcripts that I wrote, is that I needed more of the sequel, more of my artist paintings to kind of like give you my color on how I interpreted the events happening. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the Gail series, just like that. Yeah. Oh yeah, we have the action too. So it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. I can be pretty good with the use of simile and metaphor when I'm going deep into thoughts, you know. But that's how I feel I can show the world what was actually going through us. Sometimes I have to just kind of go deep into my subconscious and remember what it was like back then, what I was thinking, what I was feeling, and trying to find just the right words to say what was in my heart or what was in Brent's heart. I know the reason I fell in love with him in 1991 was he fell in love with me by reading my writing. In fact, he's the one who inspired me to be a writer. I decided to study writing to honor him because he was a great artist, and I wanted to be a great artist. So yeah, I am going to be writing just like that. Usually I have to go through several drafts. But yeah, I need to understand my characters thoroughly, and I'm pretty much, my sloppy first draft was character sketch and research, and I subjected you all to that. Yeah, basically you were reading my character sketches. A character sketch is going to be boring to the average reader, though. Now, what I'm going to do with those character sketches is cause them to make the scenes come alive and make my characters believable. In other words, I'm going to show the reaction to the events. Brent, my husband, is a very unusual person. And to show the reaction to the events, I'm going to need to do just like I did right there. For instance, Zach tried to make Brent come across like a wimp when his penis was shrinking. Like, oh no, is God punishing me because you haven't made the YouTube video that he wanted you to make? And then Jesus showed up and he said, well, I would have wished for it to be sooner, but I wouldn't have damaged your penis, Brent. But apparently Satan's side knew that I was taking too long to make the video, and that I was making love to the Antichrist. Anyways, I'm diddly daddling around, but go ahead and check the links underneath this video. I had fun today expanding. It's really hot, so I have to go out early, but I got a little bit more done, but that's what I plan on doing. I'm going to go in order right now. So the next story is going to be the story of how I was seduced by the Antichrist. I think that is an important event to cover. And then after that, I'm going to go into how they try to have Rule 13 have sex with my son to get my genes. Yeah, that'll be the next story, I think, after that. I'm not sure, but that'll be 1 too. Yeah. That was rather interesting. Anyways, I've got stuff I need to do, but I have a lot of stories to write. You might say, is that one important? Well, when my son did not want me to write that. He said, oh no, don't do that. But that's an important story though. Yeah. I think he's more secure that he's not going to have hang-ups about it. He probably thought God would criticize him for what he did. No. He's part of the showcase for righteous free love. He turned out well, my son did. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be the next one. He ended up marrying Brianna Jenkins. And when he was married to her, he discovered that he had bisexual tendencies. I think he was afraid to let me know that. He thought I would condemn him because we had been churchgoers, you know. I have grown so much. Anyways, I'm jumping ahead. So yeah, I'm going to be going in order, okay? Some of the stories I may not change too much. Some of them I may totally change. Some I may eliminate. Yeah, and some I may take. Anyways, I'm going to be going in order. And the stories are going to have, I'm going to outline them first, write out the scenes, like 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of like I did when I wrote Silver Skies, and try to pretty much stick to my outline so it doesn't get confusing. And then bring out the major events and our reactions to the events and how we grew, and then the story will be over. Yeah. But I may have to have some meditation time to make sure that my sequels are accurate and that they really show our growth. Yeah, that can be a challenging writing assignment to I think it's very important that each story highlights how we grew or how we changed, and or how the world changed. If it's a character story, which would be about a character growing and changing, then the focus needs to be on the character. If it's an event story that shows how something affected the world, then I need to highlight how the world changed. And even then I can kind of go a little deep into thought. And, yeah, anyways, you guys, check the links underneath the video. I've had some pretty deep thoughts about God, Jesus, and Satan. So that's how I know how I need to write these stories.
In a world of secrets, where darkness reigns, There's a warrior rising, breaking free from chains. She's Gail Schuler, her heart pure and strong. With the power of love, she'll right the world's wrongs. Yeah. She's the first, a passionate crusader. Standing by the side of conquer it all. Through space battles and trials.